we're going to start with prioritizing self-care in your life. You are a very on page. If you were to look at Lynita's accomplishments, they are many. And you, on paper, you have a great life. But you and I were talking about so many times as women, we go through and we check all the boxes of what we've been told we need to do to have this great life. And all of a sudden one day we're like, all this looks great on paper, but something's out of alignment. So
yes, Melissa.
And I know you know, because this is what happened with you. And so talk to me about the role self-care played in prioritizing that in getting to that space on this journey.
Absolutely. So the first thing I have to say is I am so appreciative to you, Melissa, for creating a platform where we can have conversations like this transparently and genuinely, because one of the things that I find as women is we work so hard to make everybody else feel good that we almost forget that we're included in everybody.
We are one of the everybody. Yes.
Just this past Saturday, I gave a meditation that it kind of grew because it would wound up being about 4 or 5 minutes. And I encouraged the women, it's about 200 women. And I said, we have to remember that we are included in humankind, that your mission is service and really uplifting the community, but you are part of the community. So it has to start with you first. And I know that that is absolutely counter to everything that we have been taught. And I've had this conversation, Melissa, with women of different ethnicities, races, geography, religions. We were all taught the same thing. Everybody comes first, and then I'll take care of me. But I promise you, if you don't take care of you, you won't be around to take care of anybody else.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I had to learn that the hard way. Mm-hmm. I've had a beautiful life. I've had wonderful parents, great support system, a loving husband, wonderful daughter, and just about everything I've ever set my mind to, I've been able to do. Mm-hmm. And I did not learn to say no when things were not aligned with what I knew my calling was, when something would just exhaust me. There were days where I didn't sleep because I was saying yes to things because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings, or I just knew that they just had to have assistance. Like there was nobody else in the world that could help them, right? If I didn't do it, oh my goodness, everything would just fall apart. And that's a lie. It's a lie.
And I'm laughing because I'm like, oh my gosh. Like literally this morning, my middle daughter was reminding me, that's not yours to fix, Mom. That's not your responsibility. Even as I have these conversations with women, I still have to be reminded that it's not mine to go save. And the world will still be, and it's very humbling when you realize the world will not fall apart. If you choose not to participate in something.
Yes, and we're so blessed to have the little people who tell us, because I remember my daughter was 6 years old, and she said to me once about an employer I was trying to just get them together. She said, Mommy, sometimes people just don't want to be trained. At 6, that's what the baby said to me. And she was absolutely right. That person just didn't want to be there, and there was nothing I could do about that. Yeah. And so I did something about that, which was let him go.
Yeah, but that is so true. You hit on so many important things there, that piece where we think we've got to show up everywhere, and the cross-cultural narrative. I had a guest on from India yesterday, and same thing. She's like, I talk to women all over the world. And this is a narrative we start hearing when we're born. That everyone else comes first. We see it modeled by our moms and our grandmothers and our aunts and our sisters and our friends. And we're told very early on, that's service. That's how we serve. And you can serve and also take care of yourself. And it's like, the irony of the whole thing is like, we're not good. It's just what you said. We will not be around to do anything for anyone if we don't fill our own cup before we go in and take care of everybody else. I love what you said. We women, we are part of humanity. We are part of, we are included in the everyone.
Yes.
And so I think too, it starts with having those conversations when we've got to start letting little girls, little boys, all the children know at a very young age that they're all part of the equation, that they are all get to live a life that is aligned with them. Take away all of these stereotypes and expectations. So everyone's learning to grow up together, supporting each other without all these boxes that we're supposed to, let's get rid of the boxes and just let kids be.
Yes.
And I mean, obviously you want to train them to be kind and all those things, but we've been given this narrative that if we take time for ourselves or make a choice that aligns with us, but might upset some other people, that that's selfish. That's not what selfish is. So we don't even have the correct definition of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I've gotten to the place where I have asked people to stop using the word selfish and to flip it around. Instead of saying self, say soul. And the root of ish is focus. So soul focus, yes, you absolutely are. And you do have to start with yourself, because if you are not full, just like you said, if your cup is not full, there is nothing to pour. And that's when we show up in spaces counter to who we are at our core, which is love. We're mean to people. We are snarky. We are gossipy. We mistreat people. We don't do our best. Or worse, we do something sloppy and then try to gaslight the other person and make them believe that they are not grateful and should be thankful for the mess that we've given us. Before we started the recording, Melissa dropped something. And Melissa, since this is your turn, I'm going to let you say it because I don't want to steal it because it was that good.
Well, I was telling Lynita about, and those of you that have been listening for a while know that I've coined a term called weaponized gratitude. I think it's mine. If it's somebody else's out there, you can have it. I'm not trying to take it, but I hadn't heard it. And it's exactly what we're talking about, where as women, even as soon as we're little girls, if we express discomfort or disagreement or disappointment in something in a room full of people that aren't equipped to handle their own emotions and nuances. So they're certainly not equipped to handle a child's. You're shut down and told how thankful you should be. And then there's an assumption that you're not thankful. If you're complaining, if you're pointing out that there's something should be different, that something's wrong, that something can be better, then that means you're not thankful. And that is just so not true. And it tells you that it's sending the message to little girls and women that we don't want to hear you, that your voice doesn't have value, that you just need to sit down and shut up and be nice. I really dislike the word nice in the terms that it's been used, because I think it's been misused, and it's part of that whole weaponized gratitude thing. And
absolutely.
And instead of having the freedom to be like, oh no, this is a space where I am safe, where they do want to hear me, where they do want to hear my voice. And then we go down a road of, this is how we get on the road. I think that you and I have gotten on in our own ways of we please other people. We're okay. If I could behave this way, I will receive affirmation. I will receive support. This is what I've been told is the line to success. If I check these marks and follow these boxes, I will have a successful, happy life. And I damn well better be grateful and not ask any questions.
Right. And what's so funny to me, Melissa, is it took me a while to come to this, but gratitude and thankfulness, that does not mean that whatever is in front of us, we just take it and we swallow and say, okay, this is all I get. Gratitude and thankfulness allows us to properly manage our feelings of disappointment when our expectations are not met, when something happens and it is counter to everything that we agreed to. It allows a space for authenticity, honesty about what we're truly feeling. And once we can face that, we can put it to the side so it's not blocking the energetic creativity that's needed for us to get what we said that we really wanted out of life. I mean, I look at each of us who are working every day, and the world has told us that stuff is the pinnacle of success. Clothes, money, cars, whatever it is. So since that is the most recognizable form, I will use an example from there. We get our first home, and normally it's something that's just big enough for us, and it's to say we are incredibly grateful. We're grateful we have a roof over our head. We're grateful that we have something to call our own. But there's a reason that we continue to work every day and to strive for the next thing that will bring in more income, because we do want something that's larger when we start our families, when we turn half our house into our office, whatever it is we're looking to do, right? It doesn't mean we're not still grateful for where we started. It means that I am now ready to use those energetic forces for the next thing.
Yeah.
And when we're able, right. So it's the reason I totally embrace what you were talking about with the weaponized gratitude is that emotion, that feeling, those people trying to gaslight you into thinking that if you ask for anything else, my goodness, pow, pow, shame on you. Those are the people who are trying to keep you in the box that they have built.
Yeah.
And I don't demonize those people because that box makes sense for them. It works for their lives. But that's not your life.
Yeah. That's such a great, really empathetic way to put that, because that's really a great way to look. I think sometimes when we're trying to understand people and why they're wired, that's I'm very emotionally, strongly opinionated about the things I'm passionate about. And so that can put me into, if someone, it just seems so out of alignment, I can move into judgment very quickly. And so it's something that I've learned about over the last couple of years. This really served me and helped me is curiosity. Why the curiosity? That doesn't mean what they're doing is any more in alignment with me. And it may even mean that there's a fallacy in how they're going about it. But when you get curious about it and you start look at their background, look what they've been taught with, look what's worked for them, look what has created success for them, it gives you that compass of why. And then it's like, okay, and it takes away the personal piece of it. It's not personally about me or about you most of the time. It's larger than that. It is about a narrative in a way that has served them. Now, packed within that narrative, there can be a lot of problematic things, but it's nothing to do with you specifically as a person. And so I think when we can unpack that, and it also helps us to figure out who and where we can put our time and energy and spaces. It's like, all right, you and I are not in alignment on this from a values standpoint. So I'm going to be really mindful. I'm going to set some healthy boundaries and with my time and my energy on what I give here, because, we're just not going to get very far together unless you change your trajectory, your idea, your way of thinking. What I had to learn is I can't change people who don't want to change. I can bang my head into a wall 5 million times about what I believe is right, what is a value, what is important, what is impact, whatever it is. If that person doesn't want to hear it, I am wasting my time and energy, and it's not my responsibility. It's my responsibility to walk my own journey. If something I says have impact and makes them think, great. But in terms of like staying in that space to try to move them when they don't want to be moved.
Yes.
And that has been, and I think women struggle that a lot, period. I know that it's something I'm still struggling with. My daughter literally had to set me straight again this morning. Remember, Mom? I mean, it was like, oh, you're right. So it was like, I still have to be reminded, but I think and so when we find ourselves in these spaces, we really have to be, okay, that's a good message. On remembering, it makes it about behavior rather than personal. I mean, it makes it keeps that with the way that keeps that person as a human instead of an enemy. I mean, but it also creates clear lines of like, okay, this is where, not so much energy or effort here because it's falling on deaf ears, or it's not going in a place that's really going to make an impact or move things in a way that I feel really called to.
And, that's the next thing, right? Being honest about what our skills, gifts, and talents are, and finding our tribe that will support that, and our career or vocation that aligns with who we are and how we show up in the world. I totally believe that most of the angst that we see, particularly in corporate America, is because we have an entire generation of people who were told, go after the money, and then when you get rich enough, you'll be happy, and then you can leave the job. But that was the great setup, Melissa, because there was never going to be enough money. There was always going to be a moving line as to when you were going to hit the success mark. And the truth of the matter is, success is actually about joy, and that is an internal job. You have to determine that for yourself, because otherwise, you are going after somebody else's idea of perfection or success, and it's somebody else's checklist, and you're never going to check all the boxes because that person's checklist is always evolving.
Yeah. And that moving target thing is so important. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But you mentioned meditation earlier. I know you've really worked and spent some time on practices that really feel you. What are some of those things that you do as you care for yourself now that are really helpful to you?
Absolutely. So, like I said, I come from a beautiful family. I learned the art and the practice of prayer. And at the time, I didn't know it was called meditation, but meditation. And then as I got older, I had the opportunity to go to India a couple of times for women's conferences. I was a delegate, and I was introduced to the Art of Living Foundation, which was founded by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. And they have a program, and it's changed names a couple of times, but when it started, it was the Art of Living, and they teach you a series of breathing techniques, of stretches, and ways to sit quietly, so that, as my grandmother would say, so you can listen to God or spirit or universe, right? And the idea behind that is so you can hear yourself. What do you really need right now? What are you really feeling right now? What is the best course of action right now? And then you can take the next step. And if you believe in God, then the God of your understanding can bless that. If you don't, then you have the power and the authority to move to the next thing. But it has to start within. It has to start with you. And so every day I start my day with prayer and meditation. And sometimes I only have 5 minutes, but Joseph Murphy, who was an early 1900s philosopher, he used to say, take the charge. If you're going to be late, take the 5 minutes so that you can set the intention for your day. And and go forward. And just about every person who I deem to have some level of success from the joy side has had or has that type of mentality. Oprah Winfrey, MLK, Gandhi, Napoleon Hill. You just cannot get by the fact that you have to start with you and you dictate your day. Otherwise, somebody else is going to do it for you. And that's when the discontentment starts.
That is exactly right, which goes beautifully into confidently setting boundaries. You have found a way to set those boundaries. You've found a pattern because you've got intention. You know what your values are. You know what you care about. You take that time. You prioritize that. You understand that success comes from joy and contentment. It's an inside job. And you can't, it's not someone else's responsibility. I think so many times, not just as women, but as people, we have to get to a point we understand that our happiness is not someone else's responsibility. That we have a responsibility and an accountability within that we have to act on. But because we've been so, again, those narratives that we heard early on, it sometimes can take a while to get there. But I love how you've got this practice in place. So when you got to this point, because there's a journey here, you haven't always been in this space. No. When you got to this point, what was it like for you to be like, oh, there's some places I need to put some healthy boundaries, guard post lines around my time?
Yeah. So, unfortunately, because of the life that I've lived, it took very hard terms for me to get to this place. Because I always felt like I can manage on my own. This hard work thing had got me to this point, so it's going to get me to the next point. But businesswoman Deshaun Mayweather would say, what got you here won't get you there. And that was absolutely right. I had worked myself into stage 4 endometriosis, which is the uncontrolled growth of uterine cells, outside of the uterus. And for most people, that they're asymptomatic, doesn't bother them. I was not most people. And so it had grown from the place of my uterus up into my lungs. Oh yeah. And so I had to have a total hysterectomy plus bowel resection. And it took that experience because it was a very serious surgery to the point where, the doctor comes in and they have to take a breath to tell you that this may not go well, kind of a thing. And you're signing all of the releases. It was like that. And my daughter at the time, she was small. She was 6 years old. And I realized that if I did not make a change in my life, I was not going to see my child graduate from high school. And that was totally unacceptable to me. And so, I did that thing that we do when we bargain. Oh God, if you bring me through this.
Better.
Yeah. And, but I was serious. And so after I got home from surgery, I hit the pavement and I was like, I have to get some help. And so I hired a performance coach who also had a spiritual background, Reverend Rowena Silvera Beck. And we outlined my life. And I had, listen, no lies, I had 7 pages, single spaces of roles and responsibilities at home, at work, my community.
Oh my God.
And she was like, we got to get this down to 2. And it took 2 years to do that because I didn't want to just say to folks that I've made commitments to, oh, well, so sorry. So it was working to maintain the relationships that I built. For some of them, because people just didn't want to hear it. And you were talking about boundaries. That's a boundary. If I have told you what's going on and you're not do that, that was a courtesy. And you still will not do the things that are necessary for us to have a smooth, collegial, and professional roll-off. There's nothing I can do about that except protect myself, which I did.
Yeah.
And so at the end of that 2-year process, I literally look at pictures from that time and pictures of me today. And although I am older, because my daughter will literally be 17 this summer, I look younger now.
Yeah.
I definitely look less stressed. And people will ask me like, what'd you do? And so I tell them, I was like, I had to redefine what success meant to me. And what it means to me is living in excellence rather than perfection. And the two of those things, perfection is living someone else's idea of success. And like I said, for most people, that is the worldly, tangible stuff, money, cars, clothes, houses, right? And switching that over to excellence, which for me, it's a sliding scale of what my best is and what makes me happy at that point in my life. So at this point at 48, what is excellent is not what it was at 28. And I surely hope it's not going to be the same at 68.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because it should change. It should evolve, change as we grow and go into different seasons. Also, you pointed out there what got your attention too many times. That is the story. That is the story with women time and time and time again. It takes that big thing to shake us. And I think for you and I both, that's why we're doing what we do. We're like, you don't have to get there. There's a better way. Do not go down the road I went on. We want better for you. And if you are, in your 40s or 50s, like Lynita and I are, it's not too late to make a change also, but it's usually those big life events, and that, which is our next talking point, that is the connection of emotional, mental, and physical health right there. That is the connection. There. Your body was screaming at you.
Literally.
Screaming at you to pay attention. And it took that big thing for you to, but that's what happens when we take on too much, when we don't fill our cups, when we don't process our own feelings, our own time, when we live by other people's expectations of our own. These things build up in our bodies, and it has to have somewhere to go if we're not moving through it, living authentically. And this is how it happens. I mean, mine was a little different. I ended up in the ER twice over a 10-day period. I didn't have any surgeries coming out of it, but I had a lot of symptoms that were problematic that were all tied to unprocessed emotions, trauma, me not taking care of the things, me being unwilling to sit quiet long enough to listen to my body because I was so afraid of what it was going to feel like to walk those things out. And I had been fed the narrative that was a selfish thing to do for many, many years, which is a narrative that we hear as women so much. So thank you for sharing that. And that was such sadly an explicit example, but you paid attention, you listened, and you put those practices in place because you're like, wait, this is not what I signed up for. This is not life that I was meant to live. And I've got it. And I can do better, and I can help other women do better. And at least, you and we're having these conversations now. We're finally calling a spade and saying, no, this narrative that women have been living by for hundreds of years, really, it's not serving us. It never was serving us, but now we're going to say something about it. We're not going to do this anymore because it's really not working for anyone. It's not, I mean, if you break it down but it's really hard to change a narrative that for some entities has worked and to get, and that's why it requires us as women coming together. It's like, we got to rise up, do this together, bring everybody else along, quit seeing each other as the competition, realize we're in this together and we got to change it together. Because one of us in a room is not going to change the narrative when there's 11 others that don't look like us. I mean, it's just not. I mean, it's.
That is the truth, though. That is absolutely the truth. And that's, I believe, Melissa, the reason that we have to have these one-on-one conversations for other people to hear, and then they can have those conversations. A lot of times we believe that if there were not 100 people who were impacted by what we said, that we failed. That is so not true. That is not true. Do you realize that for every, quote, great person that we say is great, that there was someone behind them that was encouraging them, loving them, giving them shots. And that happened one action at a time, one conversation at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. That's so true. Thank you for that point. And that really goes really well into this is how we support each other in living unapologetically. This, in a nutshell, this talking point, how we can support each other in living unapologetically by doing this, by taking these lessons that we have learned and having these conversations and going in front of other women wherever they'll listen to us and say, listen, there's a healthier way to do this. And you have a right and are worthy of and valuable of, taking up space and living the life that feels authentic to you, and listening to your inner knowing. It is trying to tell you something. It is trustworthy. You don't have to take Lynita and I's, let's get to a hospital and have a major surgery or in the ER twice. That is not a route we recommend. Yes. It's not necessary. And I mean, one of the things that I get really excited about is when I get to talk to, I got to talk to a group of women at Fresno State University a couple weeks ago. My husband works there, and he's like, hey, they want to know if you want to be part of this mentorship program, and talking to these young women about building their empowerment and confidence as they get ready to go out in the work world, and how to not just work wise, but their life wise. Because I have noticed my 3 daughters are in their 20s, and that generation is much more mindful about life balance. And you talk about
they are.
Much more mindful about that. And I think they've watched us hit these walls and are like, I saw what my mom did. It didn't work very well.
Yes, I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
I think we can do better. And so they're much more mindful. And my husband and I, when they look at job opportunities, places they want to live, whatnot, they look at it from a very full, like, not just how much does the job pay? Is it work? Is in alignment with me? Am I living in a place where I'll be able to find activities and a community that is nourishing to me? Is this going to be in alignment with how much time I want to give to my work during the week versus how much time I want to go out and live the other parts of my life? They really look at more, and they will say no to things or walk away from things that we wouldn't walk away from 20, 25 years ago, because they have a better understanding. Even within that, I've noticed that there's still a lot of those same stigmas there. There's still a lot of those same performance, want to please my parents, the university, Fresno State University has people from all over the world there, but we have a very rich cultural story here in the San Joaquin Valley of Hispanic and Armenian and Italian and Indian, and so many different people and places that have come from all over, not just to study at the university, but have immigrated here, moved here, whatnot. A lot of first generation college students, a lot of these kids wanting to make their parents proud because of the sacrifices they gave to be here. And that can get really sticky. So I end up talking to them a lot about, okay, totally understand that. I was a first gen college student myself. Also, you've got to make sure it's a balance of being true to yourself. It's a balance of listening to your inner knowing and being in alignment with yourself, because at the end of the day, your parents, for the most part, really just want you to be happy, and so having those honest conversations with them, I go, because if you go down this road of, being this major because that's what your parents think is great, but you hate it, you might be very good at it. You're certainly smart enough to do it. But 15, 20 years from now, you're not going to be okay. I promise you, been there, done that. I can tell you right. I can save a lot of time. And angst and possibly hours of therapy if you realize that right now and listen to that. And so I spend a lot of time like understand and identify what your values are now. Understand and identify that you need to make space for yourself each day to care for yourself, to fill your cup. You need to identify boundaries. It's okay to be, if something doesn't feel right, listen to that, trust that, so talking to them about that it fills my cup, and it's how I can show up unapologetically. You're doing that with your work. You're doing that with the women that you get in front of, the people you get in front of, to have these conversations. And I love some of the language you use. We talked about life on fire. The soul piece is so important. So talk to me about those spaces you go in and how you're able to not only be your unapologetic self, which you've gotten to now, but bring other women along with you.
Right. So everything that happens in our life has purpose. And so the first thing, particularly when you were talking about gratitude and Thanksgiving, is to be grateful for the things that we've been through. And even though if we knew then what we know now, we would have done things differently, but we don't have that option. And so we embrace those experiences as our own, and we use them to help other people. So when I'm walking into a space, I'm very honest with them, just like the conversation we're having right now. All of my hard work did benefit me. It did and continues to benefit my family. And it has allowed me to enter into rooms that other people just cannot walk in. There are interviews that I have had just because I am an attorney and CPA that other people just are not going to be able to do, right? There are people who hear me because I have that background as a professional as well as the spiritual part as well. And so when I am coming in there, I am coming in as a person just like you. I've been through the fire. I have had the disappointments. I've had the embarrassments. I have had the bumps in the road when it comes to establishing my business. And so I am able to say to you, I'm not asking you to do something that I've not done. I'm asking you to do something that I am doing right now, because this is a daily choice. It is very easy, Melissa, if you have a loved one who has been through addiction, you know that every day they have to make a choice that they won't smoke again, they won't drink again, they won't gamble again, right? This is the same thing. All of those awards and accolades that I have, that was addictive. I loved having people say, "Oh, I just love you being on my team. Lynita, you're just so amazing. Oh my God, oh my God." And it felt good, and it got twisted up in my self-esteem. And so I learned to define my self-esteem with that stuff.
Yeah.
But that meant that somebody else was able to define whether I was happy or whether I was sad. So I was totally and completely emotionally hijacked. And it wasn't until I put that to the side and I said, no, I'm making a choice daily, sometimes hourly, depending on what's going on, that I am going to be joyful, that I am making a choice to be grateful, to be thankful, and to be kind to not just other people, but to myself. And so when people hear that, they're like, I can do that. I need to do that. Yeah, I am totally in.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, that I need to do that. And also, you said something that's so important there that brings us in when we put ourselves as a priority, when we pour ourselves into ourselves first, it enables us to show up well for other people.
Absolutely.
It enables us to like, oh, wait a minute. She's not because our body language and our tone of voice will give us away. If we're saying something that's out of alignment with our words, people can read that. I mean, that's very easy. But when they see she embodies this, I feel this from her. How could I do this too? And I think so many times it helps other women to hear me. I did that too. I understand that too. Oh, and also there's another way, really? And we can do that? We're allowed. We're allowed to step out and do these things, because I think it's something, especially as we're breaking old narratives and old stories and just lies and thoughts that we've treated as truth, but they're really just thoughts, that it requires, when you can do it together in community with each other and feel that support, I think it brings a lot of energy too. And again, I go back to what I say about these things have to be done together. You and I talked about this before we got on. Get rid of the scarcity mindset. We all have something to offer. And how we go about it is going to hit different people in different ways. I'm going to connect with people you aren't going to, and vice versa. But then if they see us working together rather than in competition, then it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's room for all of us. It creates more space for these conversations. And that's empowering. And that it reminds us that it's a collective. That way, the next time you're in that boardroom with another woman, and maybe she's struggling, or she's not feeling as confident, or the man over there interrupted her. You can be the person to say, even if you don't know if you agree with what she's saying, it's about the respect of like, I don't think that Lynita was finished talking yet. How about if we, let her speak, especially if you're someone who's got a little more experience. They're not going to you've put some deposits in the bank, so you can take some withdrawals and speak up and not suffer the same consequences as maybe that other person, that other woman might. Right. Using those opportunities to show you, to extend the olive branch of like, we're not trying to kick each other out here. We've both got a place here. We got to lift each other up and make room for more so that and this isn't about kicking men out of spaces. It's just about opportunities to be in the spaces. And it's about, and that's for the corporate world, but in the world in general, having a voice in our communities, in our homes, in our faith spaces, and wherever it is that we're seeing time and time again. I was watching a movie earlier today. It was just this movie I've watched over and over again. When I have a lot going on, I have a few shows that I'll turn on that'll just like, it's mindless. I don't have to think about it. It doesn't stress me out. I know it's coming. and I'll do that to kind of to settle in between. But I notice it's like, this show keeps pitting the women against each other. And we've got to see better. We have to see better from our entertainment industry as well. I mean, and seeing them to quit making money off of this narrative, because it's like, no, let's have shows and narratives about women coming together and destroying this idea that we got to knock each other down on the way. But
you're already doing that, Melissa, with this platform. And that's why I'm saying that we can't get caught up with, I don't have 1 million people that hear me every day. You don't need 1 million.
Yeah.
You need one.
Yeah.
Just need one, the right one. And if we continue to do things like this, having these conversations, speaking our minds and saying, this is not right, I'm not supporting that, and pushing the envelope and forcing people to reconsider the choices that they're making, then we're doing what we're supposed to do and change will come. But we can't give up.
We can't give up. And I think it can be hard because you're just like, geez Louise, this wheel is moving slowly. It is, but it didn't move anywhere for a long time. Yeah. And sometimes that wheel goes back, and we're seeing, some of that happening right now too, but we not getting discouraged. Yeah, that's a really good point. But thank you for that. And thank you for that affirmation, because I think it's important. But you and I are having these conversations. We're creating these narratives. But I go back to, it has to start with you. If you're listening to this, you're like, what can I do to make it safe? Start looking at yourself. What are you prioritizing in your life? Where are you spending your time and your energy? Are you making room for you? Are you making space for you to live your life unapologetically so you can invite other people to do so as well? We hit on this already, but the importance of coming back to your why and your values. You've done that. You've found that why and you've come back to it. Tell me what it was like when you got there.
Yeah. Once I got there, I knew I had hit on something, but I was not sure what to do with it. And so I did what a lot of us do. I went back to what I knew, but not with the same intensity. And so I took that 2-page list and I stuck with it. And so when things would come to me, and now instead of evaluating them as, sounds good, I would ask, is this aligned with where I feel that I am going? If the answer to that was no, I would say no. And if it was yes, then something else had to roll off. So that my balance stayed. My boundaries stayed pretty firm. Now, is there sometimes an overlap? Then absolutely. But it does not happen often. And another thing that has helped me is that as my daughter has gotten older, I very much treasure the time that we have together. And so I very jealously guard my calendar. And so that there is time for her.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. That helps so much. And it gets to that joy piece. You feel better. You feel fulfilled when you live that way. Living out of your own expectations versus others. You are doing that now. You talked about how you are living a more healthy prosperous life than you were 11 years ago. So talk to me about that shift into living out of your own expectations versus others' expectations.
Right. So the first thing is the things that were fun, but were not really taking me forward as far as self-development, as far as nurturing my own self-esteem, and therefore being a good mentor, coach to people coming behind me. Those things had to go.
Yeah.
And some of them were a lot of fun. Like I used to run a media company, and we would cover award shows like the Soul Train Music Award. We had magazines. We had a whole lot of fun, but that was not necessarily aligned with what I was supposed to be doing next, because I was running it, so I wasn't in front of it.
Yeah.
And so that meant that conversations like this, like you and I are able to have, Melissa, I wasn't having, because I was stressed out doing that. And so once those things were concluded, and even though people have come back to me, and it's been 5 years now, 6 years now, sometimes the call is there because we had such a good time, but I'm like, that's still not aligned with what comes next. So that was the first thing, just being mindful about how it's feeling. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, don't get caught up in your feelings. Not those kind of feelings. This is not right. This is the intuitive approach. This is the feeling that you have that something is right for you. Because I don't really like right or wrong. That's too black or white, right?
I agree.
Right for you. Right. The best outcome for all involved.
Right.
That takes a total and complete shift in your mindset to be able to have that kind of discourse with oneself and to move on that. And it also opens up your ability to act in a way that is loving when people are not necessarily loving toward you.
Yeah. Ooh, that's really good. And that's an important tool to have in your toolbox if you're going to be at peace and content. Thank you for that. That was a really good explanation of that understanding of your time, that understanding of what it means, wanting to give your full self to things. I think, the next question goes into accepting the layered aspects of ourselves. I want to go back to that 7-page list that you had took 2 years to get down to 2. That required, you like, okay, how is this? I've committed to some things. I need to honor that, but also pull away from it. So how do I do that? And then get to the place I want to be? That's quite it took 2 years to do that. But within that, there's that unfolding of your layers and who you are and discovering yourself. And so talk to me about that layers journey and how it's affected your relationship with yourself as well as your relationship with other people.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing was I had to realize that for me, like I said, I'm a spiritual person. And so I put it in the context of I have the same access to God as that person does. Ooh. And so I am not the only resource. If I don't come through, they can tap into him just like I do. And they can ask for help and he's going to send it. Just like when I ask for help, he sends it to me. So that meant that the responsibility for that person's happiness was taken off my plate, which then allowed me the opportunity to empower other people. For instance, like as my daughter has gotten older, I have taught her how to do things for herself. She can cook. She can do her own laundry. This summer, she's learning to drive. She is pretty much self-sufficient.
Yeah.
She budget, all the rest of that. For my firm, I got an assistant. And so I wasn't doing everything myself. Then I got someone to handle the social media and have someone to do the newsletter. So it's not just me micromanaging, and I'm trusting people to help me and realizing that if something goes wrong, that I won't die. I want
and the world won't explode and all the things worse us.
It surely will not, Melissa. It surely will not. As a matter of fact, I had a moment where my feet literally touched the base of the pool. There was nowhere to go but up from there when a company that obviously I no longer work with was managing my newsletter, and they had hijacked my list and was using it for other clients. And I found out because one of them, the person was rude, but I mean, it got my attention. It said, You effing cunt. And I'd never been called the C word in my life. Yeah. And there were other things, but it made me stop and do an investigation to figure out, like, how did this happen? Why did this happen? What is going on here? And that's how I found out what they had done.
Wow.
But, once that happens, there's nowhere to go but up. And so I was like, I know what to do now to find the right people to manage those kinds of things for me.
Yeah,
and the world didn't end. The world did not end.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think we get that in our head sometimes, and it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to parse things out. It's okay to let other people do it. They don't have to do it the exact same way we do.
Yes,
it's okay to release that as long as it's getting done and it's in an honoring way that it's alignment with our values. So thank you for that. And it's like releasing some of those layers and those pounds from what we've told ourselves we need to do. But really, it's getting real honest about what we actually can release and what really truly belongs to us. Because you said something earlier about not wanting to say good and bad. There are a lot of good things out there that aren't for us. And that's a hard lesson for women to learn. Just because it's good, listen to that inner knowing. I took on something in the fall that was good. My inner knowing the whole time was telling me, you don't have the capacity for that. Did I listen? No, because I kept telling myself that it was good. Now I'm in that position where I'm having to honor the commitment, but also be like, all right, I didn't listen. I know better than that. And so it's an example of those things that are not all for us, and that's okay. We are getting down to the rapid fire here. Before we wrap this up, I'll give you a couple minutes to share how people can work with you and all your resources, which will also be on our embracinglayers.com on our resources page. So no rush to write it down, audience, but I want to give Lynita a chance to share. But before we do that, name 5 activities that nourish you.
So first of all, when I get up in the morning, I drink some water. And that gets everything flowing. I take my time and I stretch my body. I do my prayers and I give thanksgiving and gratitude. I do my meditation where I breathe deep and I listen to what is to come next. And then I shower my family with love. Those things nourish me, and they happen before I ever cross my threshold.
That's a great way to start the day. Ooh, that's good. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
Ooh, I want to feel joyful. I want to feel peaceful. I want to be fulfilled. I want to be in excellence. And I want to feel successful. But my success is defined by those first 4 things.
Yes, that's the key. That's the key there. That's that's defining what feels like whole success for you, like in all areas of your life. That's a really great way to bring that together. All right, Lynita, tell people how they can find you and follow you and learn from you, work with you, all the things.
Absolutely. So the best way is my website, which is my name, Lynita, spelled Lynita, Mitchell-Blackwell.com. And from there, you can join my email list. We can follow each other on social, and you can hopefully meet me at an event coming up near you. So my website is my best resource.
Okay. Yeah. Go to that way. And there's all kinds of things there, people. There's ways to work with her as a coach. There's blogs, how to get access to her books, invite her as a speaker, listen to other podcasts. She's been a guest on so many great resources there. Lynita, thank you so much for your time today. I've loved this conversation. I could talk to you forever. Thank you for what you do for women in the world and taking your story and sharing it with others and helping us to live our fullest, healthiest, most authentic lives.
I appreciate you, Melissa, particularly since I didn't realize I didn't plug in my laptop.
I know.
I plugged in everything else, but there's no plug here.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up before your poor battery dies. The things we do, the running around we do. Thank you so much for your time today. Go to embracinglayers.com, audience. Check out those resources on our resource page, and just learn and just follow Lynita and learn from her. And so inspiring. Lynita, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciated your conversation. And audience, have a great week. take good care of yourselves this week. It's okay to put yourself first.